The first sign was not panic. It was confusion. My wife stood in the bedroom doorway holding the empty velvet box, her thumb rubbing the indentation where the ring used to sit. She didn't say anything at first. I watched her face do the quiet math, where she'd last worn it, whether she'd moved it for cleaning, whether this was one of those small, stupid lapses that made you question yourself. It was my grandmother's bracelet that made it real. That piece lived in a separate drawer, wrapped in tissue, never touched unless there was a reason. Two absences don't argue with each other. They agree. We didn't call my mother right away. That's important. Not because we were scheming, but because we knew what would come next if we did. The explanations. The tears that never quite landed. The way urgency would be reframed as love. We checked receipts. We checked the safe. We checked the places where things sometimes migrate when life gets busy. Then we checked the security app, scrolling back through innocuous comings and goings until a weekday afternoon stopped us. My mother, using the stud key she'd had since before we married, entering the house while we were both at work. I felt a familiar tightening, the old reflex to make this manageable, to find the version of events that let everyone keep their roles. My wife sat at the table, very still. When she looked up, she wasn't angry. She was resolved. I don't want to argue about whether this happened, she said. I want to decide what we're going to do. That was new. In my family, deciding came after explaining, and explaining was endless. The confirmation arrived without drama. A pawn receipt emailed to my mother's old address, still linked to our shared cloud from years ago, showed the items listed plainly, with weights and descriptions that matched what was missing. The deposit gone into an account I recognized immediately. My sister's. I imagined my mother standing at a counter, saying the word family like it was currency. I imagined my sister nodding, relieved, telling herself this would be temporary. It always was. Temporary had financed her life for years. When we finally called, my mother didn't deny it. She skipped straight to justification. You don't understand, she said. The bank was coming. I couldn't let her lose the house. She spoke as if a house were a person, as if the jewelry had volunteered. You should have asked, I said, hearing how flat my voice sounded, and put you in that position, she replied. I was protecting you. There it was. Protection as theft, love as secrecy. The inherited logic that harm was acceptable if it stayed inside the family. My sister texted later, not to apologize but to explain the interest rate, the timing, the bad luck. She wrote like this was a group project that had gone sideways. I didn't respond. That night, my wife and I sat on opposite ends of the couch, a stack of printed documents between us. We talked about trust in practical terms. Who had access? What could be replaced and what couldn't? What it meant that the violation hadn't been impulsive but planned. I don't want this to become normal, she said. I don't want to build a life where this is something we swallow. We waited one day. Not to calm down, we already were, but to be sure. Then we called a lawyer. Then we went to the police station. Filing the report was anticlimactic in the way authority often is. A desk, a form, an officer who asked for facts and wrote them down without commentary. He asked if we were sure we wanted to proceed. We said yes together, without looking at each other. That was the moment control shifted. Not because we felt powerful, but because the story left our hands. There would be no reframing this as a misunderstanding, no family meeting to vote on consequences. A neutral system was now involved, and it didn't care who needed what. The fallout was procedural. My mother was contacted. She cried, according to my aunt, who called to tell me I was being cruel. My sister's account was flagged, then frozen. The bank moved forward. The house entered a slow, bureaucratic slide toward foreclosure that no amount of urgency could reverse. My mother was charged with a misdemeanor. She accepted a plea that left a record where there had never been one. She called me once from a number I didn't recognize and left a message that was half apology, half accusation. I hope you can live with this, she said, as if I had authored the laws. We changed the locks before the case was even resolved. That was the clearest boundary I'd ever set, and the simplest. No announcement. No explanation. Just new keys and a line that could not be crossed. Family reactions arrived in fragments. Some people went quiet. Some got loud. Words like loyalty and blood surfaced, floated, sank. No one asked my wife how she felt. That told me more than any speech could. My sister lost the house. Not immediately. There were extensions, appeals, delays, but inevitably. She sent one final message blaming me for not stepping in, as if I had once before and simply refused this time. I didn't argue. I let the message stand unanswered, complete in its own logic. Months passed. The jewelry was partially recovered, damaged by handling and time. Some pieces were gone for good. My wife wore what came back with a kind of gentle defiance, not to prove anything, just to keep the memory alive. I saw my mother once at a grocery store. She looked smaller. We exchanged a nod that acknowledged history without reopening it. There was no confrontation. There didn't need to be. The cost of what we did didn't disappear. It settled. Family gatherings became rarer. Information traveled selectively. I grieved the version of my family that had existed only because no one had challenged it. But our home felt different. Quieter. Safer. Trust redistributed carefully, like weight after an injury. Sometimes accountability looks like punishment from the outside. From the inside, it feels like choosing not to lie anymore. We didn't protect the family as it was. We protected the life we were building and accepted what that would cost. The doors remain locked, not in anger, in clarity.